Good evening, everyone, and welcome to what seems like my 50th recording. I've had so many technical issues. I think all the guys in technical support know me by name by now. Anyway, so according to our topics for this discussion, I will be addressing the importance of theoretical orientation in theories, counselor identity, multicultural competencies, and my own plan for addressing my own unfinished business. Identifying my own theoretical plan actually was pretty easy for me, just because by nature I am a very cognitive kind of behavioral person. And the more I learn about these theories, that's definitely my own theoretical lean. Of course, all of the theories are very exciting to me because I don't come from this background, and I was kind of led into this field, I guess you could say. Um, my background is in advertising, journalism, and entertainment. And so when I started doing foster care, which is another thing that kind of um, wasn't planned, I ended up doing it for a lot of years and became so familiar and had such a large network of therapists and teachers and social workers and life coaches and all the AODA, just all of the people that were involved in these girls' lives in the treatment foster care setting, that it was kind of a no-brainer for me to continue along that line. So anyway, um, as far as identifying my own theoretical plan, that is, the cognitive behavioral piece is definitely resonates with me. Um, but when I look at all of the other theories that I've been learning since I started these courses, it's kind of different because, like, I have all of this experience and different, because I've worked in so many different ways, as an aide or as a helper. And I've gotten to know so much of this, even in the day treatments and the school system, working with autistic kids. I have a vast background of those kind of things. But now it's like I'm able to have the knowledge, the book knowledge. Like, I had the experience first and now the book knowledge. And so it's actually very exciting to me. And it just seems like when we study all of these different theories, to me it's like they're all just different pieces of one giant puzzle. And I love them all, and I would like to integrate them all. But there are a few that really resonate with me, and it's not because it's of who I am. It's because it's who I need to be. For instance, like Gestalt therapy. I was very much attracted to that because one of the concepts in that is to the perceiving and feeling, and that to me is kind of astounding when you think about it, um, that there are certain triggers and there are certain maybe memories or sounds or anything that we can come into contact with our senses. How does that actually affect our body? And I think that some people, they might get migraine headaches, or they might feel cramps in their legs, or they might get stomach aches. And sometimes, if you really think about what's happening, it's all due to some environmental trigger that actually has an effect on our body. And I think that for us to be aware of that and help our clients to be aware of that is a really important piece, because our physical body obviously is very important to keep healthy. And if we can see certain things that are happening, um, we should try to be aware of that. And so that is one thing that I've really paid attention to, and I really want it to become a part of the therapy that um, that I will eventually someday, hopefully, will um, be helping clients with. But the other thing about Gestalt is, other than the perceiving and the feeling, is being present in the moment, and being like a cognitive behavioral type person. Being in the moment is definitely not an easy thing for me. Um, I've always got a tally. I've always got a list. I've always got a to-do list and a plan of things that I have to do. And very often I'm very focused on that. And so just trying to relax and just chill out and absorb what is happening in the moment has been really good for me. And I've noticed a couple of times, because I have to purposely say, okay, stop, you know, because sometimes it's right down to the minute. Okay, I've got to do this by 2 o'clock, or I got to be it by this time. I got to be this far with this by 5 o'clock, and I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself. Um, but just chilling out and being in the moment has been really relaxing, I guess. And I've noticed that when I do that, that a lot of those things that were on my to-do list, they just automatically kind of get addressed, and they kind of automatically get done without me actually trying. Um, Another therapy that I really like is narrative therapy. And that is because probably I really enjoy telling stories, and I enjoy hearing stories. But the other perspective of that is listening to the stories, and how do they affect us? How long have we been telling that story? Does that story even apply to us anymore? And the same thing can be said for clients. And is the story even ours? Or is it something that other people have said about us, and then we just went ahead and took it on? So that definitely, I could go on and on about what I love about each theory, but as far as the most important, is definitely Carl Rogers' person-centered therapy, and his ideas about congruence and unconditional positive regard and empathy. I really think that you have to have that first. And when I think about um, my experiences with the girls with foster care, I think that the the most important, and the thing I liked best about that was that it was not 1 hour a week to build that rapport. I was with them day in and day out, with their families, with my family, with their school. It was every day, and that is something I'm really going to miss. Um, but I do really respect that you cannot take a cognitive behavioral approach with anyone, I don't think, unless you have the rapport and the trust and the relationship already built. Because otherwise, then you're just telling people what to do. Um, I know there's a lot more to it than that, but Carl Rogers' theory has found itself, and it's weaved its way into every single therapy before it and after, because that's how important it is. Another thing that I like about what he says is being non-directive and not offering advice and not telling anybody really what to do, but going on a journey with the client. And whatever it is that the client, because they probably have things within themselves that they haven't addressed or that they don't even know is there. And so sometimes when we just reflect or listen to what they're saying and then reflect that back to them, they learn something from that. And they probably learn more than if we were to just give them all the answers as far as we are concerned, as far as what we think would be best. I can make lists all day long for people, but that's not exactly probably what they need. And so I think that his theory and his approach is mandatory. And I think that as much as my dream client would probably be somebody who walks in and says, I'm ready to go. I know exactly what I want to do. I know exactly how I'm going to do it. I just need the motivation. I need to be held accountable. I need a plan. Yeah, definitely. I can go there. But that's not going to happen in most cases because I don't think that clients come to us very often with that attitude. We're usually their last resort, or maybe it's even mandated. So no matter what our theoretical lean is, I do believe it's always going to start with a person-centered type of approach. And also, whatever your philosophy of change is, I always think of two. Is it the behavior that changes the thinking, or is it the thinking that changes the behavior? To me, I think it's all of the above. It's all of the above. And it just depends. So I guess my own theoretical orientation is definitely integrative. But I realize that I actually have to integrate and live and breathe and digest certain concepts before I take on another tool or another concept that I really like. Because if I just start taking bits and pieces of everything that I like without actually living it and breathing it and being it myself first, then it's probably going to come off as more eclectic, which, according to our readings, can be very haphazard and sometimes is an excuse for therapists who really maybe haven't gotten good at one therapy or another or skilled, and so they just kind of pick and choose whatever. And without I don't think there's actually anything wrong with that if you know what you're doing. And I think it takes probably years of experience and a very, very strong foundation. And so that, I guess, is my goal, is to, even though I'm kind of picking and choosing things, I have to practice it and I have to live it and I have to breathe it. And I'm doing that with myself and with my family, and just really trying to truly understand something before I take on something else. As far as my intention for developing my own counselor identification, especially in the area of advocacy, I definitely have some strong feelings about this, and I've done, I really truly applaud all of the whistleblowing Aaron Brockovich's, but I think that in that we have to be very careful and choose our battles wisely, and most importantly is not feel guilty for the battles that we choose not to take on. And I think it was Kirian in her video that stated that she has to be careful about what she brings home because it affects her family and it will affect her children. And I think that that is really important. Now, that being said, I think that we have to acknowledge the fact, be prepared for the fact, and be okay with the fact that some clients are going to fall through the cracks. And it's going to be heartbreaking, and it's going to be unjust, and we can't take that home with us. And we can't aspire to fighting hard for every single injustice that we see somebody going through. It has a lot to do with self-care, but when I think about that, I think about if we are going to have unconditional positive regard for our clients, then we also have to have unconditional positive regard for ourselves. And we have to know our limits. And we can't feel guilty about it. Life is life. Stuff's going to happen. You know, we can't do it all. And that's one thing that I really have to keep in mind myself. As far as memberships and contributing to the field, I do believe that that is a responsibility. It is our job. Anyone who chooses this field, it's truly should just be a no-brainer. But when I think of the word obligation, then I think if you're doing it, and if you're not happy doing it, and if you're not inspired to do it, whatever it is, becoming a member of an organization, or writing for a magazine, or doing research to understand something, if you're whining about it, and if you're not happy doing it, then what's the point? You know, it should come from desire, and I think it should come from passion. Even though we should, otherwise we're just going to get burnt out if it comes out of obligation. For some reason, when I think of that, it makes me think of some of the teachers and some of the professors I've known over the years. And there are some times when you will leave class, and you're almost high. You're feeling so inspired, and that teacher has inspired you because they love their job and they love their students and they love the subject. And then sometimes you'll meet these other teachers or professors who it seems like their yearly curriculum, it's the same tests, it's the same quizzes, it's the same lecture, it's the same outline, the same demonstrations, word for word sometimes. And it's like they go through each year on automatic, and there's nothing new. Versus the teacher who, you know, will give the lesson and then say, well, did you see the news yesterday? Or are you aware of this new study that came out, or this new scientific discovery, or whatever? And then just kind of integrate that, and letting the students know this is our required knowledge and base that we need to have. But we also, you know, can integrate these other things. And I feel that comes from passion. And I think that that comes from loving what you do. And I think the same goes, you know, in counseling. If you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to be involved, and you might not contribute that much. But you shouldn't force yourself either, because when I think of when am I getting stressed out, when am I becoming unhappy, and I've tried to really narrow these down as far as knowing when things are getting to be too much before they overtake, because you know how that can happen. So you have to be sensitive to your own personal cues. Mine is definitely when I start complaining. When I start complaining about stuff, I know that I have started that process of running on automatic. and then I have to stop and take a step back. And I think that as far as like the professors I was talking about, um, if you don't care, if you don't love it, I think it's time to take some time off and kind of reevaluate things, because we should work is a big part of our lives. We definitely should be happy with what we do. My own understanding of multicultural competence and how I plan to strengthen those skills. I feel like I'm giving the same answer every time to every question, but as far as being multiculturally competent, I think it really has to do with caring and listening. And then once you hear the message, whatever the message is, that you start integrating it into your life and it starts becoming a part of you. Um, I think that is I think that's truly the answer. Um, really listening, and I think um, I can give one example. When something really just kind of hit me in the head like a brick as far as a multicultural issue. And when I was doing foster care, I was also working with a lot of Native Americans in the school district and at the local Boys and Girls Club. But I had the privilege of having a wonderful, beautiful Native American girl living with us for 2 years. And I say us because with foster care, it was a family decision, and I would not have been able to do any of this without the support from my kids and my husband at the time. Um, but we had an issue that really just hit me. That really hit me. We're all in the car, and it was me and my husband and my two daughters and my son and my foster daughter, my Native American foster daughter, and we'll call her Sierra. So we're all in the car and we're getting ready, to go shopping. And she's just kind of sitting in the back of the car, and she says, "No, I just you guys go. I just want to stay. I'm just gonna sit here. I'm good." And I'm like, "Oh no, come on, Sierra, let's go," because we had already been dealing with so many of her social anxieties, and she had a lot of kind of irrational social anxieties, and we were working on them step by step. And I was pushing her quite a bit, and we had been making a lot of progress as far as eliminating some of the fears that one of them was she couldn't carry a plastic bag down the street. I looked at Sierra and I said, come on, let's go. We can do this. And as I explained before, we had already been dealing with some of her social anxieties that we had been working on. And she just looked at me and said, "No, this is this is not what that is, basically." And I said, "Just be blunt and just tell me exactly what is the issue." And she said, "Okay, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but what would it look like for me to walk in with a bunch of white people?" And to me, my only response was, "Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that and sharing that with me, because I had never thought about that before." And to me, it's all about, from every minute before that episode was that I was colorblind, and that as long as I treated everybody as if they were white, then I was absolutely not racially biased in any way. And just for her, to expect her to be seen, in public with us, she had a different opinion and she had a different perspective. And that's when I think I really it was kind of like one of those bricks to the head, and what I realized at that moment was that my definition of being colorblind is it's barely the beginning. It's barely the beginning of being multiculturally sensitive, because I never once considered her perspective. And so, with that in mind, I think that being multiculturally sensitive and unbiased really has a lot to do with listening. And it really has a lot to do, back to Carl Rogers, it's all about that relationship. Because if I had not had that relationship with her, she never would have stated that. She never would have said that the way that she did. And I think that's the bottom line to everything. And so when I kind of think of those kind of situations, applying it to the person-centered approach as well as the cognitive approach, because my first instinct was to just say, come on, we can do this, let's go in, I'm with you, we can work on what we've already been working on. But it kind of makes me think about, if I'm in a situation with a client, and let's say I really don't know their background and I don't understand a lot of what they're going through, it would be very easy now for me to say, you know what, I really don't have a good understanding of this situation, but if you're willing to work with me and we can educate each other, I know, I have enough skills. Obviously, I can help you, and we can work through the goals that you have already identified that are important to you. But I don't have, a perfect understanding. So it's going to have to be a mutual collaborative type of thing. Now, let's say that I have a colleague that is very educated in this, and who is like, okay, let's say they're an expert at dealing with whatever it is that my client is dealing with that I don't have an understanding of. I would not hesitate, to make that clear and let this client know, but I have a colleague who has dealt with these kind of things and understands exactly your perspective. And so would you like, would you like to meet them, or would you like to have an appointment with them? I truly believe that if you already have the therapeutic relationship set up, and if there's already trust and respect and rapport, I really think that that client would rather have someone who is less educated, that they have the rapport with, than someone who has a complete understanding and good knowledge base, but someone that maybe they don't really connect with. So as far as the multicultural piece and awareness and my own desire to develop those skills is simply to really pay attention and to really care and to really listen. And if those things are present, then I think that there isn't anything more that you can really do. As far as my own plan to address my own unfinished business is, okay, this one was actually really hard for me. When I think about unfinished business, I think about bullying. I think about unresolved problems of being abused, or being a victim of something, or abandonment, because I've seen these things in a lot of the, mostly girls that I worked with. And you can see how that affects, especially if they've been sexually abused. Um, but for my own self, I can't really think about any unfinished business, and it's not like my life has been perfect and trauma free or anything, but I've been able to either work through them, make peace with it, make peace with the people involved, and I really don't see any of that in my own life at the moment, but I know that there's always a potential, and it depends on what I go through from this point on, how I process it, how I deal with it. But I think the hardest thing would be um, for a client that's kind of going through some of this. Sometimes I think that we have to um, distance ourselves from any kind of a toxic relationship or toxic people. And sometimes those people are our family and they're people that are close to us. And I think that to tell a client or ourselves, I can't be around you anymore. I love you, and but I can't participate in this anymore, and I can't even watch this anymore. I think that would be a really, really hard thing to do. Anyway, as far as unfinished business goes, I think that my goal is to just be aware, is to be aware that to make sure how I deal with whatever comes, that I make sure that it doesn't turn into unfinished business. And since I don't have that kind of a thing going on right now, my goal is to just absorb any kind of education and really focus on integrating whatever it is that I'm learning right now. As I mentioned before, you know, the toolbox. Um, I want to add as many tools to my toolbox as I can. And I think that right now, being in school, I am literally taking the time. And I have the time because this is my job right now. Well, a big part of it anyway. But when I'm working full time, how much time will I actually really have to sit and evaluate and process? How much time will I take to do that? And so right now, it's that everything that I learn, I make sure that I have to really digest it. And I guess I can give an example of that, which was our last unit, in Unit 8. We were asked to identify 4 areas of needed growth. And one of mine was, and this was in the multicultural area, don't insist on a more thorough explanation of multicultural differences than is offered. That brought up so many different things for me. Because, first of all, the explanation of not exploring is because sometimes a person's silence, if we interject something or start asking questions, and this is even when we're being completely non-directive and we're just trying to help a client explore their own self, sometimes our questions can be leading. And that was in our text. And when I read that, I really had to think about that. Also, what it brought up for me was about silence, was about how comfortable am I with silence and what happens when there is silence with a client. And I started thinking about that, and I think I can go about 5 seconds maybe 8 at the most before I will interject something. So I really wanted to absorb this because I thought it was really important. So as far as silence goes, I really, as far as that whole concept of what I learned in that unit, I really wanted to try to apply that and see how that would go. So the next time that I was talking to a friend of mine, um, who is always very frustrated with work situations, and I'm kind of up to date on the saga of all of that and the people involved and what he goes through. And he was telling me about the latest episode, and as soon as he stopped, my mind was kind of reeling with all kinds of questions as far as, and this was the same guy that had already done this and this happened and whatever. And I just made myself be okay and just do that whole thing about, being in the moment and just being comfortable and not say anything. And what I noticed was as soon as he started talking again, what he brought up and how he continued the story was a totally different direction that I wouldn't have even considered. Because if I would have interrupted with my questioning, this other stuff wouldn't have even come out. So as far as that, don't insist on more thorough explanation of multicultural differences than is offered. I think that also goes, it's also true for any situation, multiculturally or not, because in my view, what is multicultural is just anything that we don't understand. I mean, it doesn't have to be, an ethnic thing. Of course, when I tried this on my daughter, it was a totally different thing. I mean, she says that I don't listen, and I probably don't, but sometimes it's kind of, if she's bouncing in with this boyfriend did that, my boyfriend and this friend of mine is she's so immature, I can't deal with her anymore, and this is impractical, and my teacher shouldn't even be a teacher. How in the heck did she get her license? And oh, by the way, if Donald Trump becomes president, we have to move to Canada. I mean, I think sometimes I just can't keep up, but I definitely have to have better listening skills. So as I'm trying to listen to her when she comes in, I'm going to use the same thing. I'm just going to be quiet because I don't listen well enough, and she's going off on something. And then all of a sudden, I just get this, what? Why are you looking at me like that? And I'm, well, I'm just trying to listen, make sure you finish your story. Oh my God, you finally decide to listen. Oh my God, Mom. So I guess what I'm saying is everything, one concept is not going to work for everybody. Obviously, we know this. Um, so I think that, in light of that, we just have to always keep that in mind and just keep learning and keep applying whatever we can. And um, to whatever it is that we're learning, to just really think about it. Anything that's new, you know, um, it's like a brick to the head, and I don't like with my foster daughter. That was definitely a brick to the head. It definitely changed me. It definitely changed my perspective on things. But I think that sometimes if we are stuck in some worldview, or if we have our own ideas that are very stringent, and I know that we say that we are going to be open-minded to every aspect, and that's the way that we aspire to be, but sometimes we don't even know when we're kind of stuck. And I think that sometimes if something really hits us hard, it can be very painful instead of being a cathartic kind of realization. And so this is what I try to focus on the most. And so whatever issues that that are presenting, whatever knowledge that we don't have, I think it's if we can integrate it and if we can become it and it becomes a part of ourselves, then we can keep on adding more knowledge and more tools and more interventions and more theories and theoretical perspectives or whatever it is that we want to do with our clients. I think it all has to do with our own tools and how skilled we are. But that knowledge base is really important. And as far as the knowledge base goes, it's been really helpful for me lately. I've been kind of, whenever I'm just kind of around the house and doing things, I like to put YouTube on and look at the biographies of people like Freud and Skinner and Bandura and Erickson and just listening to where they're coming from and the life experiences they had and realize how they came up with the theories that they came up with based on their life experiences. They're as diverse as our clients are. And so I think it's really important to have that foundation. And even though I say that I want to be very integrative, there has to be a strong foundation first. And I think that especially in the classes that I've taken at Capella so far, um, it has it's been extremely enlightening, and I can see how everything follows a certain path, and that we are the classes make a lot of sense, and that we are learning things, and we are building on things, and I think we just have to take advantage of that. And that concludes my Unit 9 assignment. But I would like to end with one of my favorite quotes, which is, we can only take our clients as far as we are willing to go ourselves. Thank you very much, and I am so glad to finally be done with this because I really want to watch everybody else's videos, and it was very fun to do this, and I hope you all have a great night.